down rubber now.
He's just a good old boy who loves burning rubber and driving fast.
Turn right, then turn right.
We have made our way to Brighton, Michigan. We are at Arrington Performance.
Arrive at your destination.
Not only are we at Arrington Performance, we are also at Diversified Creations, home of Mr. Mike Copeland, and the Gen 3 Hemi place, which y'all know I love the Gen 3 Hemis. Hemis period, that's me. All right, we are at what I'm going to call Gen 3 Hemi heaven. And I'm here with my buddy Mike Copeland.
How's everybody doing?
All right, Mike. You had this crazy idea. You know, Jeff and myself and CRC, Edelbrock, we're doing another car that's going to be auctioned off this coming year, and we bought a beautiful 57 Chevrolet. But I'm going to show y'all what's going to be next year's SEMA project, and I think y'all all going to be surprised. Check that out. I'm just messing with you. That's a beautiful 77 truck. There it is right there. So this is the next year's project that will be with CRC and Edelbrock. This thing is absolutely gorgeous. And y'all can't imagine that we were going to do a 57 Chevrolet with Jeff Lutz involved, could you? So y'all check this thing out. It's absolutely built to the max. Got a Vortec 350 in it, got air conditioning. Interior is perfect. You being the Gen 3 Hemi guy, what are you getting us into here?
Well, you should have known when you invited me to come be part of it that we were going to build you a Gen 3 Hemi. And you know, I mean, people that know my background know I was a Chevy guy forever. I mean, I built LS's since the late 90s, but you know, here we are today. I build Hemis, you know, my team and I do every day, and I think it's just natural. Jeff's running a Hemi now. You've been a Hemi guy forever. Let's put a Hemi in that thing.
Damn! Y'all heard that correctly. We are putting a Gen 3 Hemi in a 57 Chevrolet.
Hey, if you don't like it, put it in the comments.
Put it in the comments. Go ahead, comment down below. You're either going to love it or hate it, but we're doing it. And I am pumped up and excited to be here. Y'all know Dentley, it's got a Arrington Performance Hemi in it. Baby D, the 5.7 Hemi in it, a lot of parts from this guy right here. So what are we going to put in this thing? What are we building for the 57?
Well, we're going to start with a 5.7 liter Hemi, and then we're going to, of course, update it. You've got a lot of great friends in the industry, and all of them want to help you and want to be a part of it. If you look behind me, you'll see Mala supported us with pistons and bearings and all the parts they make, everything. Edelbrock, supercharger, cylinder heads, comp cams, of course, camshaft, lifters, everything for that. I mean, all you got to do is call and tell them you know Clay Millican, and they send you parts. So
that may not work. I'm just saying.
Well, he has to call for you too. But anyway, so we're going to do that. We're only going to target like a 500 horsepower engine. It's going to be something super dependable, something super easy to drive. Going to put it in there. I know that TCI supported you with a 4L85E that's all built, and so we'll bolt that behind the Hemi and give you a great daily driver kind of package.
Yeah, this is going to be a car that you can get in and just take off and go anywhere.
Anywhere, yeah. Go run events. We were on Power Tour when we last talked, and you can come run Power Tour. You can go anywhere you want. Cruising the coast, any of the events that happen across the country. Drive it a couple thousand miles.
Yep.
But that's not all we're doing.
And you're going to have to come back for another video for that. We're going to save that, Mike. So let's talk about. So we've got Edelbrock heads that are actually they're brand new. That's going to be a new product coming out very soon. And these may be like the first set they've made, actually.
Yeah, they are. These are early castings. You can see this is, they'll be available as a full CNC port or as a standard. Where we're at, they're just gasket matched. That's all we need for what we're doing.
Right.
These things flow like crazy. Obviously bolt right on a Hemi, all of the upper structure and everything. They come complete, or you can get just a bare casting. But chambers are full CNC ported on our set. You can see that. Stainless steel valves. Again, this is you could treat this thing like a daily driver. You bolt this set of heads into your whatever car, your Challenger, your Charger, your Durango, and never have to think about them again.
That's really cool. The thing is with this car, again, I want y'all to know that Mike is building us an engine that is basically a 500 horsepower, which is a lot of power, daily driver.
Yeah. So
if you wanted it, if 57 is a daily driver.
Yeah, well, hey, it's got air, it's got power steering, got power brakes. It'll make a great daily driver. It's not, this is a very popular package that we do, obviously upgraded with the new Edelbrock head, but it's very popular. We got cars all over the world with these engines in them, and you know, many of them are 100,000 plus mile, just keep on going and going and going. Your 5.7 can outrun a 6.4 Scat Pack car when you do this package. Yeah, even at the 500 horse. So these things, they make a lot more torque, and torque's what moves them, right?
Yep.
Yeah, not in your world of racing, but in that other world, they say, you know, horsepower is how fast you're going when you hit the wall. Torque's how far you move the wall when you hit it.
Exactly. But it's some cool stuff. I mean, we did this Edelbrock E4 supercharger on the GTO we did, and have you used any of these yet, or will this be your first one?
Oh no, we've used a lot of them. Yeah, the 2650 version, you know, there used to be a 2300 version, and then before that there was a 1900 version. So that's all the size of the rotor set inside it. 2650s make so much power we have to slow them down.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to make 1,000 horsepower with a supercharger.
That's really cool. I know the GTO sounds cool when you rev her up. I'm sure this one's going to be the same.
Oh,
you know?
get that whine, right?
That whine is
Love
amazing.
that supercharger whine.
Yes, indeedy.
Yeah. So.
And it's kind of cool. Like I say, so many people that we already work with got involved. I mean, you can see the Mala pistons here, rings, bearings, all the things, and I think that's some parts that you use pretty regular as well.
We do, absolutely. Yep. They build all first-class parts, right? And, it's great that they support you by giving them to us, but if I didn't believe in them and we didn't trust them, we wouldn't be using them.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't talk about it. We would just we would put the parts in that you use all the time.
Yeah, we do a picture, we do this video, and there'd be no pistons. But this is a great forged piston. They come coated. They got a 1 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter ring package. They got all the good stuff. That improves, it reduces the friction when they run, improves fuel economy, and improves performance.
Right.
So it's a standard kind of package. Bearings, again, same deal, right? They're a great piece. You can use them with an aftermarket crankshaft where the fillets are larger, but they work in a standard crank as well, which is what we're doing here. So all first class stuff.
I mean, we run these very same bearings in the Top Fuel car. You know, we put a beating on them. If there's any torture test to be done, the nitro engines will make that happen, and that's the very same stuff we use in that. I am excited. I mean, this thing going in a 57 Chevrolet, like I say, I know a lot of people will probably be like, why are you doing that? But to me, we're taking what some people consider the most classic car ever, you know, and we're bringing it into 2024, essentially, you know, with a Gen 3 Hemi.
Yeah. Well, that's all part of it, right?
It is.
It's you know, the Hemi's a later version of the early ones, right? We're in Gen 3 right now.
Yep.
No different than the LS side of the world, right? They're in version, now they've gone to the LTs, but they did Gen 3, you know, the 3rd gen and the 4th gen of the LSs.
So you told me something that absolutely shocked me about the Gen 3 Hemi, and you were a GM engineer for a long time.
I spent 26 years at GM. Yeah.
So The story I want you to tell is about all you engineer guys hanging out, and LS might have had something to do with the Gen 3 Hemi.
Yeah, well, so when the LS was designed, it was a clean sheet, right? And the guys did a phenomenal job with cylinder head design and the block and the 4.40 bore spacing and all the other things that go along with it. When, you know, we're all in Detroit, right? It's Ford's here, Stellantis well today, but it was, you know, Mopar, GM, all of us are all here, and we know each other, right? Especially those of us that tend to work in advanced stuff. We all know each other because we all poke fun, you know, hey, we made more power than you did. You know,
right.
You made more power than we did, dang it, you know. But anyway, the first Chrysler Hemi Gen 3s that were built were done on LS short blocks. So they actually
That's so crazy to me.
Well, and literally the head kind of interchanges. So they bought short blocks from us at GM, and then they pulled the heads and everything and converted them to Hemi, changed the pistons and did a Hemi valve train kind of setup in them so they could start doing development work. Obviously, they did a raised camshaft in a Hemi. It was a step further ahead than what GM did, but the number one thing they did, and we actually did it in the first GM LS, because I happened to put that one in a car, it had external oil drain backs. And they eliminated them on the LS for cost, and they were worried about the gasket leaking. But in Hemi, they actually did the external oil drain back, so the oil drains down the back instead of down through the center of the engine. It's the number one Achilles heel to LS engines.
Wow.
When you road race them and you wind them up a bunch, it's why dry sumps are so important in that arena. If you run extended RPM for extended periods of time, especially as the cubic inches went up, because if you remember, LS started as a 5.7. So as the cranks got bigger and they filled up more of that bottom end, they had to do some more work in the block for windage, and it would pick the oil up and it would rotate with the crankshaft. So that it would suck all the oil out of the pan. And that's an Achilles heel for LS.
So essentially, the Gen 3 Hemi is an improved version of the LS. It's kind of in a roundabout way. I mean, I know that's going to make some people mad, but
in the comments below.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, you'll get some of that. I mean, they're both great engines, right? And the continuation to the direct injected version of the LT off of the LS, that's a great upgrade, more for emissions than anything else. I could give you all the results and why it works, but it's all boring stuff, so we'll save that for another day.
Exactly.
But the Hemi is a great engine. It works exceptionally well. They fixed a couple of those little things that GM didn't do initially for a number of reasons. And then, you know, you can always say Hemi wouldn't exist if it wasn't for LS.
That's true. The Gen 3 Hemi.
Gen 3 Hemi, yep.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, I've been thinking about coming here, me and you've been trying to figure out how to make this happen, was how does a GM engineer end up with Arrington Performance? How did that happen?
Well, it actually goes back one step before that. So I grew up a Ford guy.
Really?
Yeah, my dad was a service manager in a Ford dealership. I mean, I loved cars from the time I was young. I'd be out in the garage with my dad. I was 5 years old, working with him. I remember having my hand up in the door of a 54 Ford, holding a nut so he could put a window regulator in, right?
Right.
I mean, that's just the way I grew up. And I always just wanted to be a mechanic. My dad had so many Fords, you know, 64 Ford Galaxy 500, 427 dual quad car. I mean, that was our really only car. That was what we drove everywhere.
Right.
Right? I mean, we would get in street races. He had 406 Ford and a 54 Ford, and he would break the transmission. I remember driving home from street racing on Telegraph in the back seat of the car with my dad and mom in reverse, because he'd break the forward gears and we'd have to come home in reverse. Right? That's the way I grew up. So I was a Ford guy. Dyed in the wool. When I got out of high school, I got a job in a Ford dealer, working I started sweeping the parking lot at 14, and then became a mechanic, and then became a shop foreman, then a service manager. You know, that was my path. And GM came along, made me an offer. I went to work for Cadillac Engineering, did that for a number of years, retired from GM, went and ran a little company called Lingenfelter. Maybe some of you have heard of it. And that's, you know, big GM territory. Corvettes and all kinds of crazy Camaros and everything else. Well, Magnuson Superchargers was owned by a group, a private equity, and Kim Magnuson. So she also, through her group, owned Arrington. So I did a lot.
Is this the same NASCAR famous Arrington?
Same companies where it started in like
Yeah.
'64 with the Hemi, and then all the way through the years. They had refocused when Dodge pulled out of NASCAR, and were building Gen 3 Hemi stuff. They were kind of the first at the game, and some of the best, frankly.
Yeah.
Well, when I retired from Lingenfelter, she called me up and wanted to hire me to come run that company and help bring them, make more money, right?
Right.
That's the purpose for business, right?
Yep.
So I did that. I talked to her a number of times. It was in Martinsville, Virginia. I lived in Michigan. I didn't want to uproot my family and move and everything else. I already had one company, Diversified Creations, here in Michigan. And so the opportunity came, and she said, "What do you think about owning Arrington?" So she called me on a Friday of Labor Day weekend. We were on the way to the sand dunes. I got a little 1,000 horsepower Jeep we play with up there. And so we talked about it all weekend. I'd already done some due diligence on the company. Called her on Monday and said, "All right, here's the deal. I'm going to offer you two options. One, I'll come to Virginia. I'll spend 6-8 months with your people. I'll teach them what I know, and I'll try to help the company grow and develop your marketing programs and do all that. Or I'll buy the company. You tell me." And she said, "I don't question that you could help it, but I think you need to be there longer than that." And so she made me an offer. We bought the company. I was in West Virginia, I was there in Virginia on Tuesday morning to meet people and tell them what the future was, offer some of them jobs. We moved it to Michigan, and the rest is kind of history.
I remember you telling me that, like, dyno, y'all bought everything, like everything.
Yeah, we bought a ton of stuff. You have to remember, Arrington was a NASCAR shop, right?
Yeah.
And even to the point when I bought it, there was still Dodge NASCAR engine on dynos. I mean, when Dodge pulled out of NASCAR, they literally shut the engine off and left it.
Wow.
They had 5 dynos, they had 3 spintrons, they had their own camshaft grinding machine. They had a lot of things, the number of CNCs, all of that stuff. Some of it I needed, some of it I had space for, and some of it I didn't, so they let me kind of pick and choose what I wanted to buy. I mean, I'd love to have my own camshaft grinding machine, but I just don't need that.
Right. We got comp cams for that.
Yeah, I'd love to have a spintron, but
Got comp cams for that too.
there you go. And it's so. Plus, for me, we're outside of Detroit, and if you lived in our world like I did, I spent 26 years all in advanced engineering at GM, so I know all the players. I know everything. You can buy CNC time in Detroit if you can buy it during their off times for basically paying for the employee alone. And so you don't have to pay all the expensive, math agreements. You don't have to update all the equipment. You don't have to do any of that stuff, right? And for those of you that don't know, CNC equipment is a lot like a PC laptop computer. It's outdated the day you buy it, and it just goes downhill from there. It's really good when you write that check for $1 million, and then 6 years later, something goes wrong in it, and you need a part, and they say, "Oh, we discontinued that 3 years ago."
Right.
So then you got to hunt around, which is actually where Arrington CNC machines went, because they were a few years old. Companies bought them for spare parts.
Wow.
So they could keep theirs running, because you couldn't buy them anymore.
Right.
But they had so much of the best equipment in the world there at Arrington. And, they did every Dodge cylinder head.
Really?
That went on a NASCAR engine. It was done by Arrington until the day, and even after the day that they stopped doing it. The best equipment known to man to do that stuff. And while I'd love to have some of that, we just don't need it.
Right.
I mean, we have our own CNC. We do our own programming for heads. We do all of that. We do use a Sergi to cut all the seats, which is all of the kind of the best stuff. Not what they use for NASCAR world, though.
Right.
I mean, it's a whole different arena, but
Yeah.
it's a lot more time, and frankly, we don't finite an engine for a half a horsepower.
Right.
We're not going to test 40 camshafts to find a half a
Yeah.
horsepower.
Well, I mean, who needs that other than, you know, drag racers or NASCAR guys or whatever, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, NASCAR, you give your heart and soul no different than like a pro stock guy
Yep.
for a third of a horsepower.
Yes.
Right? You'll spend $100,000 trying to figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
Our customers don't necessarily need that, and they certainly don't want to pay for it.
Right,
So,
right.
so we don't do that. But
Yeah.
anyway, so that was how I ended up
Yeah.
owning Arrington. My wife technically owns it, so it's a female-owned company. So remember that when we need some funding somewhere.
And she's hiding right over here.
Yeah, she is. But she's a gearhead too. She's
Yeah.
got a bunch of cars of her own. And,
Yeah, she's got a pretty neat truck that's the world has seen for sure.
yeah, that gets around a little bit, doesn't it? So.
But I'm glad to be here. I mean, we talk a lot and we've done a lot of stuff together, and it's kind of neat to kind of see the place, and I love it. I mean, look around here, there's Hemi's parts and pieces everywhere, new short blocks, customer blocks. I mean, you can just go online and really just order whatever you want. And
Yeah, shophemi.com.
Yeah.
That's our website. From a single part to complete cars, and we do them all.
Yeah, which kind of gets into the diversified creation. I think probably one of the biggest things, especially people watching this video, is you did the first for Heiberger and Finnegan with the
Yeah.
Hellcat swap.
Yeah, we
That was
built
the
the
first.
General Mayhem,
Yeah.
first ever Hellcat swap in the world.
Yep, done right here.
It was.
Same building.
Yep, same building. So, yeah, that was a whole deal. You know, Freiberger called me and he said, hey, we just made a deal with Dodge, and they're going to give us a Hellcat engine and stuff to put in our car, to put in General Mayhem. He said they also told me that the president of Dodge told me he didn't believe anybody could make one run without them being involved. He said, I figure that if anybody can, you can. So I said, well, send it out. So went on a pilot transport rig and showed up straight from Dirtfish, by the way. They had pulled the 440 out of it, but the whole outside of it was covered with mud. The inside was covered with mud. First thing it got was a power wash, front to back. But
That may have been the first time General Mayhem's ever been washed.
I think it
actually.
probably was. But it took us 3 weeks to do a Hellcat swap in that car, and we kind of followed the easier path. We did the full electrical architecture and everything because we need to keep the 8-speed alive. And in those days, nobody had ever done one. By coincidence, you know, having been a GM engineer, GM was actually ahead of Chrysler for electronics. So what they showed up with electronics in that car, I had done 5 years prior at GM. So we went in and isolated all the CAN communications and looked at how all that worked and which modules could we eliminate. And if anybody's ever been involved in that, you know there are thousands of messages that go out in milliseconds. So you can eliminate one message and send a whole system out the window. So we tested all that in a production car and would try eliminating this and bypass the communication, and we figured out pretty quick what to do. So most of the electrical architecture from a new production car went into General Mayhem. Initially people complained because we used the taillights, but they didn't know that those taillights communicated to work. They didn't get 12 volts.
Right.
So ultimately we actually cheated and redesigned the electronics and put the 68 taillights back in it so people could quit complaining at me. But, you know, part of the fun, right?
Oh yeah, and it wasn't like you had a long time frame to make that happen either. So
No, well, 3 weeks, right?
yeah, 3 weeks.
It was actually really fun. I don't think I've ever told this story publicly, but we got the car all done. Freiberger and Finnegan came in. We went over all the car. They took it out and drive it. Did some monster burnouts in our parking lot and everything.
This thing's insane.
Loaded it in the car trailer and went to the drag strip. We rented Milan Dragway. And we get out there and they got the whole road kill film crew with us and everything else. Freiberger goes up, makes the first hit in General Mayhem, right? And he was only going to do a short one, and he ended up going 1,000 foot before he lifted out of it. So he brings it back around, comes back, and we're parked in the staging lane because we had rented the track. Pulls up, and I said, told my guy that's there with me, I said, jump onto that. We had QA1 double adjustable shocks all around it. I said, I want to take 2 clicks out of the front and let it transfer a little harder, and then give me 2 clicks in the rear to plant the tire harder. And Julia, who's the producer, she looks at me and says, what are you doing? And I said, well, I said, it was a little lazy leaving the light, so we're going to turn it up a little bit, make it weight transfer a little better. And so for the next pass, she said, you can make a second pass? She's so used to their normal, you know,
Right.
kind of just hacking stuff together that they could never make a second pass. She was so much fun. I said, yeah, we can make a second pass.
Normal roadkill stuff, right?
Normal
This
roadkill
wasn't
stuff.
normal roadkill, though.
It was not. So, no, I think we made about 10 passes that day, and then they left the next day and drove it across Michigan to another track, and we got another third member brought in. They put it in. They made some more passes, and so had a lot of fun with that car.
And we know they're not easy on nothing they drive.
That's not their style.
It's
No,
definitely not.
No, if it's got 10 tenths, they're going to use 10 tenths.
That's
So.
for sure. We have got a lot of stuff going on with this 57 Chevrolet, and he's made it way more interesting. I can't wait to see what you folks think about what we're doing. Gen 3 Hemi and a 57 Chevrolet. I'm excited about it. Jeff and Jeffrey, they're excited, but they're going to be the ones figuring out how to put it in there. But I think they can handle that. I think they'll figure that out, don't you?
Oh, I got all the faith in the world in them. And we'll help them with a couple little things, but they got it covered. It'll show up already running. Right?
Exactly.
So you hook up a half dozen wires and
Yep.
hit the key.
Be good to go.
Yep.
Folks, you're going to hear more from me and Mike. It'll be in a video upcoming. We've got some really exciting news coming up. Appreciate you guys watching, like, and subscribe, and sharing. See you in the next one.